So now we have a wonderful opportunity to share our stage with someone else who is just amazing. And thanks, Ursula, for your phone, because I left my paper somewhere. August Gold. August Gold actually just met John recently when he attended the conference in Geneva, the international conference for the Center for Peace in Geneva. They host an event every year, and they've connected, and he has just spoken so highly of you, and I have heard your name for years, and we're from the same area. And I just wanted to share with you a little bit of history about our speaker today. August Gold is the founder and spiritual director of Sacred Center, New York, for over 8 years. She's an award-winning author and has served as spiritual leader and counselor in New York City for 20 years. She's an amazing coach and spiritual leader and a great author and amazing talent. And let us give a warm welcome to August Gold.
You have to have a special microphone kiss. You can come in, but you can't knock microphones. I have to take this in for a moment. Oh, man. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for turning the light up. That is beautiful. I loved Christmas Eve service here. The vibe started there. It was so beautiful. It was so red here. You know, in New York at Christmas, it's still black. You know, it doesn't make a difference what holiday. If it is, you know, St. Patty's Day, it's still black. You're still always going to wear black, which is probably why I ended up in the ministry. Because it's the one place where you can wear black all the time. All the time. My goddaughter looked in my closet. She's about 18, very into fashion. And she came into my closet one day and she said, "You know what this looks like?" She said, "I'll tell you. It looks like the person whose closet this is, who lives in this house, is an undertaker." Right. Oh, man. Thank you for having me. I shared the stage with Dr. John. Is he Dr. John Waterhouse? He's a doctor of the soul, man, isn't he? Doctor of the soul. I shared the stage with him and Dr. David Alt in Switzerland. And I got to tell you, I went to Switzerland in my own right to study along with everybody else, to be a student. I was also one of the teachers and presenters there, along with those two wonderful men. But boy, I was a student. Because when Dr. John and when Dr. David got up, I was sitting in the front row, taking all my notes, learning as much as everybody else there. And I figure you have John here all the time. So I don't have to tell you a John story, because he probably tells you all the John stories. And if he doesn't, Barbara will tell you when he's away the John stories he won't tell. But I do have a David story that I have to tell. And what's wonderful is that we are celebrating the work here that David Alt is doing. And you mentioned him this morning, and his vibration must be all around, because I'm feeling him myself. And I felt him when I was there in Switzerland, when he told the story of walking through the airport many years ago at a time maybe you didn't know him. I've known David for quite a while, because in our church, Sacred Center, New York, we used to invite him to come and speak and sing. So I have watched him from the man who he began as a minister, to truly the man, the force of nature that he is now. And he was walking through the Dulles airport, he said. He was a speaker at the time. He was a singer. He was doing everything he should be doing. And 44 weeks out of the year, he was doing it. He was on the road 44 weeks out of every year. And he said in this last year and a half, he had what he called a life savings cough. And what that meant was he had a cough that no doctor could figure out. And it cost him his life savings to try and figure out what the hell the cough was. And no doctor could find out what that cough was. He said, I was willing to go to anybody If a doctor had a string with a chicken, and in the chicken claw there was a crystal ball, I'd be there to find out what this cough was, and nobody could tell me what the cough was. And he said, and I'm walking through the Dulles airport, and he said, my shoulders were bent over, my head was bent over. And he said, I am so exhausted. This cough, when you're a singer and you're a speaker, when that's what you think you should be doing and you're doing what you should be doing, and the cough begins to eclipse your ability to do it, and it's what you know how to do and it's all you know how to do, you start to be very worried. And he said he is walking through the airport, and he said, dear God, just give me a sign. You ever been in that place? Oh my gosh, you ever been in the place like maybe this morning? I'm always in a place where I'm looking for a sign, because a sign enables my human body to know I'm standing in the right place at the right time doing the right thing, regardless of what it looks like. Regardless of what it looks like. And that, to me, is exactly what this teaching is. It's exactly what Ernest Holmes meant when he said there is one presence, one power, period. And if you've ever seen pictures of him, little guy, wearing his suit, and I truly think that men who wear suits do not have to spend any time in their closets at all, the way women do. As a woman, you have to make sure that the shoes match the pants, and the pants match the blouse, and the jewelry is appropriate, and if there's a vest or a blazer, then you got a necklace business, you got earrings, you got to do your hair, dye your hair. I mean, there's so much going on when you're a girl. When you're a guy, you go in, you pick a suit, right? You put it on, and it gave him all this extra time to think deep thoughts. I'm convinced. I don't have that kind of time. There is one mind, he said, there's one mind by which we think, one spirit in which we live, and one body in which we are a part, and one light that lights every man's pathway. One spirit, one mind, one substance, one law but many ideas, one power but many ways of using it. One. And he has these in all caps, because that's very Ernest Holmes. O-N-E in all caps with an exclamation point. One power. When we know and absorb, not just up here in our head where we understand it as a concept, but when we know downstairs in our body, in our being, in our feeling self, that there's only one power at work, then no matter what happens, you know there is one place of origin, and that it is happening for the good and the good alone. One power. So when he's walking through the airport looking for a sign, the sign he gets is this. He looks up and he gets a sign. We get our sign. We don't always like our signs, but we get our sign. He looks up and he says, there was a billboard advertising something, and it said in big letters, embrace change. Right, exactly. I love it. Ooh. Right? We don't like those signs, right? Man, I'm with you, honey. I'm with you. Embrace change. One means this. And now I'm going to just give you a quote from one of the colleagues of Ernest Holmes. And while they might not have been close as friends, they were certainly close, nearly identical in their teachings. They just had a different slant on the way to apply those teachings. And I do believe they did, because they were talking to different levels of consciousness of people, so it sounded different. Here is Joel Goldsmith. He says, there is a universal belief in two powers, and that belief itself, just the belief, that belief itself causes every bit of discord and disharmony that ever existed on the face of the earth. There's one Power, that's why you're sitting here, because that truth changes everything. He saw, embraced change, and whether he liked that sign or not, whether we like it or not, we understand that there's one power at work, one. And that one power is having one conversation with us, and that conversation that life is always having with us is a conversation about our growth, about our expansion, the expansion of our soul, about our movement into our wholeness, regardless of what it might look like. And he went home on that day and he said, I quit. I quit my form of income. I quit my job. I quit my job. Right? And it was hard because this was his art. Teaching and singing was his art, but then his art became his job, and then his job became his responsibility. And it's different. You hold it differently. And when he went home, he said, as sure as I was sitting here, I heard Spirit tell me, I don't care what songs you sing. I care about how you feel when you sing them. And his art had become his job, and his job had become his responsibility. And he laid it down, and he went and got himself a job, what I call a bridge job. When you haven't found exactly your place, you step on to a bridge that's a job that pays the rent. And it keeps the flow of currency going as you walk over the bridge with your bills paid towards your wholeness, which is where life is always leading you, because there's only one power. And if there's only one power, it is always leading you into the place, the perfect place where you belong. And our head says, but that was perfect. And clearly it wasn't. Because over the course of a year and a half, that cough was indicative that there was something that wanted to be said within him, that needed to come out within him, that was sitting right underneath what appeared to be something wrong in his life, something wrong in our life, because we don't see with our two eyes what's actually going on, but we know in the depths of us that it's good, because it's God. And it's God alone, because there's only one power, and that is the power. So he goes home, and he takes out, he said, all the bills, right? All the bills that he owes. And he sits at his dining room table, and it reminds him, this is how his mother, when her husband died young, and he was a little boy, it was just her and him, that's how she paid the bills. Looking at all the bills with the fear. You can't help having the fear. You know there's only one power, but still you have the fear. Still you worry. Two men walking down the street in opposite directions, and one recognizes the other, and he says, hey, Joe, you look fantastic, he says. What is it you're doing different? You going to a gym? You sign up for a class in church? What are you doing? He says, no, actually, I'm doing something quite different. Joe says, I hired myself somebody to worry. The guy says, well, it must be working because you look terrific. He says, yeah, I pay the guy $2,000 a week to do my worrying for me. And his friend says, Joe, you don't have $2,000 a week. He says, yeah, let him worry about it. Still we worry, right? We know there's one power. We read it, we hear it, we take classes, we study it, we meditate on it, we pray about it, we feel it. There are moments we feel it so deeply we weep inside of a spiritual mind treatment. That's how truly we know it's true. And we sit in front of our bills, and still there's a place in us that is undeveloped that worries. And so he took all of his bills, instead of sitting like his mother in fear in the dining room, the big table, he says, I went out to the park. In San Francisco, there's a big park. I think it's Griffin Park. Golden Gate Park. The park. It was a park. Now that I'm certain it was a park. And there was a big picnic table, and he lays out all his bills. He goes to the park, he lays out all his bills on the table, but now he's outside in nature. And he says, I looked up, and I saw leaves on the trees that were beginning to turn. He goes, not one of those leaves turned to me and said, ooh, you should have seen me this summer. I was so green. He said he looked down at the grasses that were beginning to turn. He looked up at the birds in the sky, and not one of the birds apologized that it wasn't as pretty as another bird that had more colors. Nothing apologizes in nature, he said. And he said, I took one bill and I wrote one check to match the one bill. And he took another bill and he wrote one check to match that bill. And bill by bill until he got to the big bill, the life savings bill, the doctor bill. Electricity's one thing, water's another thing, mortgage, and then there's the doctor bill. And he said, I couldn't write that bill, so he had to look up and remind himself, right? He had to step back and get a bigger picture of what it is he was seeing. If you remember the great teacher Eric Butterworth, do you remember him from Unity? I don't know if you're familiar with him. He taught and he wrote for a very long time, and he said, look at the archer. It was one of his beautiful teachings that's always stuck with me. He said, look at the archer. The archer pulls the arrow away from the target. So the target's that away in front of him, but he pulls the arrow in the opposite direction, which is exactly what we're taught. When we have a problem, when we have an issue, a seeming appearance of something that is wrong or bad or out of alignment, don't sit looking at it. Pull back. Right, in the Old Testament, they say, in the morning, come up the mountain and present yourself there to me, face to face. These teachings say, don't sit and focus on the appearance of what's not right. Don't sit and worry about it. Pull back from it. Move up to a different level of mind, the level of mind in which there are no obstacles. There is no lack. There is no limitation. Look at it from that place. And he sits in nature, and that's what he did. He pulled back. And he looked again at the tableau of nature where nothing is lacking, nothing is apologizing. He turned back and he faced the bill and he wrote it, and he said, now here's the thing. Of course, this didn't mean I had money in the bank to pay these bills, but I wrote the checks anyway, right? So he's writing his checks, and then he's complete. He has his stack. He goes home that day, gets back in his car, he goes home. When he walks in the door, the phone is ringing. When he walks in the door, the phone is ringing. And he picks up the phone. They say, is this David Alt? He says, yes. This is David Alt, who acted in a theatrical performance for video years ago. And he was an actor before he became a minister. And he said actors always acted for no money, just to have the exercise of acting. And if it ever was released theatrically, which many of them were not, you got something for it. He goes, years and years before, I had done a very bad piece of film. He said, very bad. He said, I don't even want to remember it. He said, however, they were calling me now to say it's been released on video, and they have a check for me. Yeah, exactly. I love how responsive yours. Oh, you're right there with it. And then what happened? And he asked, and I love that. You are so participating in the story of your life. How could you not love this place? Of course it changes our lives. We are involved with our life in the deepest possible way. And she gave him a number, $7,000, which was the exact number, minus $20. It was $20 off from every bill he had just written. He had just written $7,000 worth of checks. So he's in his bridge job. All the bills were paid, at least initially, and he's in his bridge job. Now he's home. He's not traveling anymore. So he goes to work, he comes home, he goes to work, comes home like a regular person. So he goes to work, and one afternoon he begins doing what everybody always asked him to do, that he always said, who has time to do something like that? Wherever he went, people said, hey, where's your book? You know, your book, the book that's you, that's your teaching. And he says, oh, who has time for my book? Well, now he's working in the same place, going home to the same apartment every night. So by day, he starts to write his book. It just starts pouring out. And by night, He sends it by email home. He eats his dinner because he's eating dinner at home instead of in restaurants, and he edits it and sends it back to work by email. By day, he gets the email, he makes the changes, writes more chapters, sends it home. By night, because he's in the same place, he edits, and this goes on for a year and a half as he continues to go to doctors about his cough. Right? Do you remember, I love Harrison Ford. I just have to come out of the closet about that. Because that's not supposed to be the way it is. I'm gay. I'm married 21 years now. I should not be dreaming about Harrison Ford, but I do. At any age, that man is just a beauty. Right? If you remember him in Indiana Jones in the Final Crusade, right? There's a moment in the Final Crusade, I don't remember the whole movie, but I remember this moment. He has got a diary in his hand, and he's following this diary. And his father's in trouble, so he's going to save his father. He's going to get the Holy Grail. He's on his path to do a lot of good work. And he reaches this place in the map that takes him to the edge of a sheer cliff inside of these huge catacombs. He's on this sheer cliff, so when he looks down, it's just straight down into the blackness, right? Straight down into the blackness. Who would put themselves in that position except in Carol's 45th birthday when I gave her a birthday present to go jump out of a plane as a gift? Yeah, thank you for that gift, she said. 13,500 feet, she went straight down. The first 8,000 were straight down before she opened the parachute, and she did it, and that was impressive. That was impressive. That she was on Broadway is impressive. That she went out of a plane is impressive. Right, so he's standing with a sheer drop, just like that. Nobody had given him this gift, but he got that gift, right? And we land there in our life, just so that we know that's not Indiana Jones's story, and it's not David Alt's story. It's actually our story. Every one of these stories is our story because we're going to reach a moment in our life where when we look down, there's nothing there. When David looked out at his life, he didn't see anything but a persistent cough he couldn't get rid of, and the work he used to do that he loved that he didn't do anymore. So he's busy doing what he's doing now. Harrison Ford stands on this sheer cliff, and this is what he says. He says, he pulls out his diary that took him, literally, the map took him here, and he says, in the leap from the lion's head, will he prove his worth? And when he looks up, he sees that the opening he was led to is the lion's head, and he is being invited to leap out of the lion's head in order to take the next step, right? So we think we have problems, right? His next step lay in taking a step into the nothingness, and that's what it feels like when we let go of something. We know it feels just like we're standing on the edge of a cliff and there's nothing there to catch us. Where's my money going to come from? Where's the job going to come from? How is this going to work out? How will I be taken care of? How will I be safe? All of these questions, and we are led back time and time again to one truth, same truth. There's one power. There is one presence. It not only is the truth of our life, it is the hands that push us on the behind forward to lead us to the cliff, and it's also the hands that are on the other side of the cliff holding themselves out, inviting us forward. It's all one thing. It's all life in conversation with us, attempting to grow us into our wholeness that we already are. And we already are. And so he stands there and he goes, he says this, he says, oh, this is the path of God. See, we think the path of God is we open the door and good money comes through the law of attraction. A bag of gold shekels shows up, right? Or our perfect mate shows up, or something fabulous happens, or people come down the street and say, I've heard of you, you're fabulous. People are saying great things about you. Or people just give us gifts and tithes. That's what we think the path is. The path of God, that's the path you're on, is the path of oneness, that is a path that leads directly to yourself. And it leads to the greatest self within you that we've forgotten dwells within, that when we are pushed, challenged, invited, beckoned to take a step in a direction that is so uncomfortable, so unknown, that is when we discover the greatness that dwells within us. Because that's when we unleash our divine potential. And here is the moment I remember. He gets that this is the path. This is the path. It is the path. And he puts his big foot out. And you know, when you're out camping and hiking, you're not wearing, Donald Pliner heels. You are wearing your big fat shoes with, a Vibram sole. So when he put his big manly foot out, the camera focused in on his big foot, the foot that was about to take the step into the nothingness, the apparent nothingness that's there. And he looked down and he said, this is impossible. The very thing that David said, this is impossible. Embrace change. How do I do that? When all I've known has gotten me here and I don't know anything other than what I'm doing right at this moment. This is impossible. And he puts his foot out and he says these words, this is the leap of faith. This moment when you take one step in a direction you've never taken in before. One step in the direction you are being bidden to step in. Life is calling you. God is calling you to come into that step. That's the leap. And it's a step. It's one step. He didn't have to leap. He didn't take a running jump and then jump over to the other side, 50 feet away to the other edge of the catacombs. It was one step he's asked to do. That's all we're asked to do. It's one step, and when we remember that one step, we remember a number of things. We remember that this step, there is one power and there is one presence at work. Not two, just one. And that one is God and God alone, and that God means it's good and it's all good. The Tao Te Ching says all life is a movement toward our wholeness. And he puts his foot out. This is the leap of faith. It's one step. And he puts his foot down seemingly into thin air. And that moment is when the netted bridge appears beneath his feet in the moment he needed it. I'll go back again to the Tao Te Ching, because it's one of my favorite Eastern teachings. It's what I live by. I put it together with Ernest Holmes, The Science of Mind, and I call it the Tao of Ernest. That's how I live my life. And in the Tao Te Ching, they says the Tao, or God, or life, the Tao becomes what you need it to become when you need it to become it. Meaning, spirit, substance, transforms, these are our teachings, transforms into exactly what is needed in the moment. That cough was needed in the moment. It was needed in the moment to take him on a journey he would not have taken, to leave him right here at the edge of the catacomb. Right here, so he could take a step out in a brand new direction that we wouldn't do because we worry about what will happen if we change something. How will I get along? And our worrying keeps us from it. Life doesn't care about our worries. It knows the truth about what it is. One power and one presence doesn't worry because it knows when you stand at the edge of the catacomb, at the edge of the end of your first life, of course there's going to be a step, a net beneath you to take you to where you need to go. That's why that leap of faith, when we understand the principles, is not such a frightening thing, because it's not a leap at all, it's a step. So David took 1.5 years and he worked on that body of work, his first book, for 1.5 years. At the end of 1.5 years, he was complete. He felt finished. And he took it. At the time, I think he Xeroxed it. I think it was beyond mimeographing. I remember mimeographing, which really dates me. Do you remember that blue thing that went around and around? We're the last group of people that will remember it, right? Everybody else younger is like, mimeo, what? Right? So he Xeroxed a couple of copies of his book, and he sent it off to the publisher. And 7 days later, his cough was gone. Gone, disappeared, over, finished, complete. It was no longer necessary because he had made the journey by simply taking the one step that is assured by the principles and the laws that we live under, that is assured that there will be a net, a bridge that unfolds itself beneath our feet, but only at the moment we need it. So if we sit and we wait to see it before we move, it doesn't happen. That was the foot. The foot says at the moment your foot is out ready to walk, you will be provided for. Why? How do you know? How can you be absolutely guaranteed? Because it was God itself that was calling. It was God itself that through life was moving us into our wholeness. It was God that orchestrated this wondrous, outrageous moment of opportunity where safely you can take one step, knowing that there will be a net beneath you. So that there is a saying that goes, whether we stand, whether we leap, whether we fall, there is a net beneath us all. When we know that net exists, as the Tao Te Ching calls it the net of heaven. It says, through the net of heaven do all the prayers go, and not one slips through the net. That's how precise law is. That's how precise truth is. That's how immaculate divine order is. It just needs to see the bottom of your shoe to know that you are ready to take that first step. Enough said.